In my interview with Mr. Oluwaseyi Adeyemo, I asked him if he thinks Britain will still leave the European Union come March 29th. Mr. Oluwaseyi Adeyemo, thank you for joining us on Diplomatic Channel.
Thank you for having me.
So do you think that Britain will be exiting the European Union on March 29th as planned?
For me, that's a very difficult question because then 29th is a few days away from now. And I know that for the past 2 years, they've tried to explore all sort of options. And I know the reason why it's this difficult. And for me, I admire the fact that the negotiation is this tough because we're talking about the life of a people. We're talking about the free movement of people, free movement of goods. We're talking about business. We're talking about history, the history between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And so this is bordering on very, very serious issues. And for me, to get the best out of a matter, then you'll need to explore everything that needs to be explored so that at the end of the day, you'll be convinced in your spirit that you have, tried everything. I know that most Britons are uncomfortable with the fact that they had voted and they expected that by now this will have been done and over with. But for me, it's not something that we can treat like something that is in the stroll in the park. So everything must be done to ensure that everyone gets the best out of this deal.
They've had 2 years to prepare for this.
Yeah.
And when they triggered Article 50, the warning came.
Yeah.
Once you start, you can't go back.
Yeah.
You must finish within 2 years.
Yeah.
So why are they on preparation? Almost seems like they're starting all over again.
It's not on preparation. Like I said, it's about getting the best out of the deal. You see, the truth of the matter is when it concerns the life of a people, okay, now that Mr. Cameron is no longer in Senate, I think it's appropriate for us to talk about this. The truth of the matter is, if you ask me, he never thought that this will get to this. In his mind, when he decided to play with his idea, in my mind, he never thought that they would, vote against it. And that was why immediately he saw the thing, became what it became, he had to leave office because he looked at it and saw the long road and that it was not something he was ready for. And so that was why, in my opinion, left this very difficult work for Theresa May.
Why is it so difficult to settle the issue of the Irish backstop? Why do you think that is?
Because it's very historical. We're talking about the fact that people who were won. I mean, when we talk about Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, you're talking about the people. Now, there have been a fight. When you talk about borders, you're not just talking about the free movement of goods. You're talking about peace. You're talking about the fact that there will be people who will go bomb people, who will go kill people. And so peace is critical. And that's why it's important. It ought to be treated with a lot of care and make sure you get that of it. So that's why it's that difficult. Yes, it has been thrown in there that, look, whatever happens at the end of the day, we will still not allow you go the way you want to go unless EU allow you to go that way. That, for me, is more like an insurance arrangement to ensure that at the end of the day, the border is not treated as an ad border.
A lot of people, a lot of countries are watching with Brexit. They're making plans around the Britain leaving the European Union. For business people, that is really important to have, the facts, to be able to predict the future. As a businessman yourself, do you think Brexit will be a good deal for Britain?
For Britain, one thing I say to people all the time is, so why is Britain getting all this attention? Because they're good, because they have a strong economy, because they have an history. And so they have the negotiating power to be able to hold all of us until now. So if something happens in Nigeria, for instance, the question is how many people will this affect? And for me, as an African man, what I try to do with situations like this is to learn. So what are we to learn from this? We should learn the fact that as a people, we must be prepared. We must do our homework such that when we go onto the negotiating table, people will listen to us. Even when we make mistakes along the line, people will still be able to deal with our mistakes because we've built some kind of muscles that will make people listen to us. So that's what has happened. For Britain, yes, they have history with Nigeria, for instance. They have history with South Africa, and they could do business with them, with or without the EU. But the truth of the matter is they've done negotiations through the EU, and so that's another issue as well. So they're trying to make sure that all of the things that are on ground, that have been open, negotiations, treaty that have been signed, are not things they could just walk away from. So it's things that, so to answer your question directly, yes, in some way, it would pay them, and in some ways it would not pay them, because then it would sort of place restrictions on the kind of opportunities that they have right now. Because look, no matter how much everyone looks at it, yes, Britain is the big power in all of this, but then they have opportunities because they're able to access certain things freely because they're open borders.
I'm wondering about the anxiety around Brexit itself, because I've spoken to the British High Commissioner at the past one, Paul Arkwright, before he left, about Brexit, and he said nothing will change in Britain's relations with Nigeria. But if we really look at it, some things will change, right?
Will it change? Not exactly, because the truth of the matter is EU has an independent relationship with Nigeria. The United Kingdom has an independent relationship with Nigeria. And come to think of it, historically, the UK has an historical relationship with Nigeria, and that puts them in some ways a better relationship, as it were, if you compare it to EU. And that's why all of the negotiations that EU has done with West Africa, I mean, up till date, they've not been able to get a solid agreement out of it, because to negotiate as EU is more difficult, in my opinion, than to negotiate as UK. So for a relationship between Nigeria and the UK, you can even say that it will be a better one for both parties at the end of the day, because then you don't have to negotiate with the EU, you just have to negotiate directly with the UK.
So Mrs. May has said that, if lawmakers keep rejecting this deal, there really isn't any more. The EU says this is the only deal that lawmakers have to vote on, and this is the one that they need to accept. This week, they're voting again on this same deal. What do you think Mrs. May needs to do differently this time?
Can she do anything differently? The truth of the matter is she's explored all our options. Now, the beautiful thing is, it is the problem of everyone. Everyone, the parliamentarian and May and everyone on of this issue, have their stake in all of this. So the truth of the matter is not an issue of the Prime Minister, is not an issue of the parliamentarian, it's the issue of everyone. So in my opinion, I think we should sort of celebrate these people who have decided, not minding the fact that they have they are risking what I call the trust factor between the people who voted them in, who said, look, we have decided, why are you not taking a decision on this? They are trying to make sure that they explore all the opportunities to ensure that at the end of the day, they get the best deal out of this.
We'll be watching from this part of the world developments up until March 29th.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed,
yes.
If Britain eventually leaves the European Union. Mr. Adeyemo, thank you again for joining us. When we return after the break, North Korea walks a fine line between reneging on a promise to the United States and keeping the rest of the world on its toes as it reconsiders its nuclear program. Stay with us.